When the Spaniards conquered the Canary Islands, they seized such an old bird and many other rich natural treasures in large numbers and brought back to the homeland. The sugar bird soon became the object of an important trade. Initially, he could only enter the homes of very rich and elite because of his high price. It was carefully considered here and was seen as a favorite of women. It was an indispensable luxury item for them, the lady of the house, on the index finger of the right hand, Canary, on Sundays and holidays, sitting in the room to meet her visitors, and also painted this ornament. Thus, the old family portraits depicting this tradition can still be found here and there. The Spaniards managed to keep the canary trade only for almost a century. In the middle of the 16th century, this obstacle disappeared. Olina describes Legornia and other burdens, as well as a significant amount of canary, as well as a Spanish ship sinking on the Italian coast and the birds released in this way probably dragged with the eastern wind. He flew to the west and settled on Elba Island. There, they found a very favorable climate, they increased rapidly and rapidly, so that the Italians noticed this, and found a new source of income in the capture and sale of these birds, which they exploited extremely. Later, they began to raise them successfully and spread to the northern countries from Italy, especially to Tyrol and other parts of Germany. Both upbringing and trade developed here in a short time. At an early date like the last quarter of the 19th, there were UMAD associations in Tyrol. And after the end of the breeding season every year, these associations were sending buyers to canary breeders in Germany and Switzerland to buy pups. This application continues today. The birds gathered in this way were later carried and traded throughout Germany, some were exported to England and Russia, even to Istanbul and Egypt. At that time, it is said that every year, 1,600 birds were sold to England and each of them was paid 15 shillings. A similar trade has developed in the Black Forest and other parts of Germany. Today, with the expansion of reproduction, trade and exports have increased and became widespread. However, the existing exports from Germany to North America are mostly gentlemen in Avold near Hanover. Ray Seville is in the hands of several wholesalers such as Rua. Canary cultivation and trade has strongly developed. This was largely due to mining, because various minerals were removed in the mountains around Hymes. When these resources are exhausted, 17, towards the end of the century, another industry developed, canary cultivation and trade. Mountain peoples have always been great bird lovers, including the Tyroler. And this can be easily explained. As a result, when the enormous snow masses made almost all communication with the outside world impossible, this isolated people called with birds under captivity, where they domesticated their entertainment and distractions and taught all kinds of songs. The Tyrolers have always been masterful in this region, and even managed to produce methods that would attract nightingales in the middle of winter. This method was also used by Karl Rich, a famous Eamon, who managed to enable the famous Canaries to sing the famous nightingale. Karl Rich called Karl Rich's canary lineage of bulbul-dassel canaries. When Canary entered a thyro through Italy, those who discovered the music ability of this new bird were mostly birds of MST. Canary cultivation MST quickly became widespread, wild birds disappeared from the cages, and replaced by new birds from the Canary Islands. This situation 17, it took place in the first half of the 19th century and became the center of canary cultivation in Imskisa. The upper people noticed that as well as talented canary growers, entrepreneurial merchants and canaries could be a valuable commodity. Trade companies were established to deal with the sale of farm birds. In each trade company, the participants contributed to a certain amount, half of the country was shared among the shareholders called Semite winners. In August 2 of the year, the Tyrolery traders set out with backpacks, with the necessary travel money, and the old paintings showed only after taking the blessing of the priest. All the people accompanied them on their journeys with music up to Nazarite. There is no need to say that these traveling bird traders experienced many adventures during their journey. One of the most exciting adventures was that Seraphim Plesker, who worked next to a confectionery named IMST Tamerl and had a rich and a large canary farm and traded for his own account. Seraphim Plesker visited Amsterdam many times, and one of his visits fell into the hands of military collectors of the Netherlands, Western India, and sent to Suriname as a soldier. However, Seraphim Plesker was lucky enough to meet Abraham van Nijemlet, the governor of Suriname of the time. Thanks to his intervention, the plane was released and brought back to the Netherlands, and all the money he received from him was returned to him. After many adventures, Amst returned, but he lost his money and assets along the way. This caused him the great sorrow of Martina, the daughter of the Lord of Koven and his lord who loved him. Martina was married to her Von Sprenger, who was much older than her. He didn't have a happy marriage. After patience, her husband died after leaving her inheritance to her, provided that she never married. Plan's father left behind his wife and children and went to the distant lands. His mother and sister passed away soon. Buster, by chance, met a man who was dying in the inn again and turned out to be the father of this man. Blasha's father was running a coffee house in Constantinople, making a lot of money there. In an old and exhausted state, he decided to return to his hometown to compensate for his past mistakes, but he could not reach his berth because he had a deadly illness. He died in front of Pagla's eyes. It turned out that he had a very big Dane of Seraphim, his heir. For his father, in Borges, where he was born, Amst, who had already reached him, has already reached him, after arranging a Christian funeral next to his deceased mother and sister's grave. He welcomed him by opening his arms, took his house and acted like a friend. A few months later, Martina, who left the fortune from her first husband with Seraphim, was married. This story is described in the novel Dervo Gelvendier van Amst, which is written by E. Spindler and belongs to the author of translation rights. In Belgium, there is a large number of enthusiasts in Belgium in our country. The origin of the Belgian water canary, which also contains the singing of the nightingale in the song, is a secret. However, this Belgian canary genus is very likely to derive from Tyrol bulbul canaries. At that time, Belgium, known as the Holland of Austria, had a lot to offer. Honor with Austria. Belgian officials, artists, and craftsmen would go to Austria and often pass the Trold. They probably brought back the canaries to their homeland and continued to reproduce there, until the birds finally had Belgian vocators. Since our ancestors have left nothing about the origins of the Belgian canary race mentioned above, there is no positive proof of this, but as mentioned, this is a reasonable explanation. East Canaria breeders were the first to produce singing canaries commercially. These singing canaries brought a significant amount of money. They made mechanical singing organs for education. The Canaries were taught popular folk songs that were tremendous patience. We remember Organ, who was singing Tyrol, who was hiding in our family for years. He was from my mother's great older father. The cover was written on the cover.
1760 yılı kazınmış ve eğer büyük babamın tutkulu bir kanarya yetiştiricisi olduğu, aslen sınırımıza sadece 1 saat uzaklıkta bulunan ve şu anda Ren eyaleti olan Strailen köyünden olduğu ve 1786'da orada doğduğu.
If it is known to be born, if the organ in question should be in the hands of his father, then Tyrol bird traders often visited these regions.
Sık ziyaret ettiği anlaşılıyor.
Around the mines around the IMS, around 100 and 800, went to the Harz Mountains, the San Andreasberg and its surroundings. They also took their beloved Canaries with them, and thus the San Andreasbergen laid the foundation of the famous Harz Canaries who have disappeared since then. Therefore, the above explanation shows that the cradle of canary cultivation is not San Andreasberg, but the town of our beauty in the Yukari Valley. Once again, MSD's historical memory in this region depends on the success of Mr. Tekman, the president of the Association of Tyrol Canary Breeders Association. Do not forget to subscribe and like to our channel. Cancel Edgu preparing the video.